Hola Mi Gente, we're back again on another episode of
Raices NYC. And on this episode, we have.
Karina Ordóñez or Kari.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I am a writer, specifically a poet and aspiring playwright, but my day job is more community organizing, cultural worker, and specifically working between historical archives.
And working with archives, specifically, what would a day to day look like for you?
So it depends on which job that I have. So very fortunate to work between two historical institutions. And my main one is at Center for Puerto Rican Studies. It is the largest Caribbean and Puerto Rican archive outside of Puerto Rico, so in the U.S. And it's located within a college, Hunter College, within the CUNY system. And the second one that I work at is the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives, which specializes in New York City political history and like specifically history about Queens. So that includes immigrant history, a lot of like archives on like the Latino diaspora and immigration, as well as mayor from like years and years back, stuff about journalism and also queer history. So at Centro, my role specifically is youth engagement. So a day in the life would kind of look like being invited to certain events because I'm a part of the outreach and partnerships team. So that means like representing Centro at anything from like city council meetings to make sure that we get more funding, to make sure that Latino history gets funding as it should be, especially right now in our political time. Or it can also mean like putting together workshops for students, meeting with professors, meeting with like youth organizers and asking them how I can bring resources that specify with the Puerto Rican community, but also connecting them to other institutions that we know, like the Mexican Institute, the Haitian Institute, Dominican Studies Institute. So I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
hats.
Many titles. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and then at the Wagner Archives, a day in the life looks like going into the archives specifically and doing research with history about journalism. I'm actually putting together an exhibit with them that's going to be open for the public in June. So I've been like going through a collection they have called The Inner Circle, which is essentially like ever since the 20s, a bunch of journalists came together and wrote like political farces, like a political theater. And it's supposed to be like just jokes, but if you actually go through a lot of their scripts, you get to know like the inside. That's why it's called The Inner Circle, the inside of what was happening in political history. So it's really like an interesting bridge between like art and theater and like what was happening in the world. Obviously, like there are things that you look into with nuance because some of it is like it used to be kind of like a boys club, so some of it's like inappropriate to these times. I remember I was looking at some of the stuff and I was like, ooh, like this goes against like what I believe in,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also it was like at one point it was only specifically for white men, and then it kind of continued on to different things. So it went from like, you can see like cultural norms and societal norms change throughout history.
What is it that got you into, the archives and everything that you do right now?
Long story.
We have
I'll make it short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
also can like cut it out.
No,
Yeah.
no, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, tell us.
Okay.
We wanna know.
So it started off with me doing community organizing and cultural work. So I have a long history in human rights. To this day, I work really closely with a lot of different marginalized communities. So I'm Colombian by blood, but I work really primarily with like the Puerto Rican liberation movement. I've worked with like Palestine. I've worked with movements specifically with like families affected by ICE. So a lot of those human rights work kind of like brought me into, and like I admired Centro from afar. They were very openly like about not just Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico in relation to New York City, in relation to like other Latino groups, also in relation to Black American history in New York. So it really aligned with a lot of like what I was actively doing. And I was like, ugh, I like admired them from afar for like 2 years. I was like, I don't know, I like really want to get involved with them in any way. So I ended up applying and I got a job as like an events assistant. So I would help like put together big exhibitions, like symposiums, academic panels. And one of my jobs as an event assistant was basically to like sit and listen to a bunch of researchers talk about new stuff that was going on in academia, not just for Puerto Rico, but just like in Latino studies in general. And it changed my life. Because I had done so much like human rights work, I thought I wanted to be like an international like lawyer. at one point.
Oh, wow.
And that changed me. And I was like, actually, no, I was kind of disillusioned by the two-party system. Like, at one point, I was like a field organizer for a congressional campaign. I was working with like really big organizations. It's really important, of course, to be like politically savvy. And to this day, like that's what I operate from. But there's a lot of work that we can do, especially when it comes to like uplifting voices of women and also like Black and brown individuals within these spaces. I think their voices can be uplifted even more. And they continue to do so, which I'm so happy about. But I just really loved what Centro stood for, and that job changed everything. And I was like, actually, I think I'm better suited for cultural work. At this point, I had also started doing political poetry and like writing a lot of my feelings into poems and into stuff that people don't normally talk about. Like when I met you guys, I had a poem about femicide in South America. I had a poem about my grandmother's relationship to immigration and how she was an undocumented individual. And a lot of my family members were undocumented when they first came here from Colombia. So I took my love for art and took my knowledge of politics and also being someone on the left and brought those two together to do like cultural events, to teach people about like political education, because it's not very accessible to the public. And then they switched me to outreach and partnerships because they knew I had already been out in the community. I had already been working with different organizations for different causes that weren't just about Puerto Rico, but I had been around a lot of really amazing Puerto Rican organizers and youth activists, and I had learned so much from them. So they switched me over to outreach and partnerships, and they were like, okay, we're having some trouble reaching the youth. And it's interesting because Centro was built off the backs of a takeover of City College that happened in the late 60s.
Okay. Wow.
Very similar to the encampments, funny enough. It was a takeover of City College. It was Black and Puerto Rican students and Latino students. At the time, there were no open admissions for colleges, especially for like the City College of New York. So a bunch of young students of color, stormed City College and took it over. They had something called the 5 demands, and they demanded for ethnic studies to be in place, Puerto Rican studies and Black studies. So Centro was born off of the backs of that student movement. But because Centro had become a little more institutionalized, there's a lot of like, not fear, but people think that they can't really get involved with academia because it's very elitist a lot of the times. It's hard to puncture if you don't know how to get in there. And the beauty of this like new era of Centro was that it was a bunch of people that wanted to make this knowledge accessible. And to be a part of that and to be like actively like helping build those things for college students, not just in New York and in CUNY, but soon like across the US, is so humbling, and it's a beautiful experience. So when you guys met me, I had like just gotten full time at Centro. And I, funny enough, had just gotten some of my poetry on curriculums at CUNY. So it was like a really beautiful moment. It was like that marrying those things. And I'm still actively like working with them to build those things. And I'm not building it alone. I don't believe in doing things by myself. Like I don't want to be a dictator in what I do. So I also like ask for the help and the suggestions of other youth organizers and other students. And I always go to them and I'm like, what do you want to learn about? What do you think is cool? So yeah, that's kind of like the long-winded story of how, and that spans over like 5 years too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. But like how did you manage to tap more into your artistic side, right? Because then you started to create these poems, and I think in a way with your art, you've managed to do what these institutions can, right? Where they're trying to bring in the youth or bring in more community. And how did you tap into that?
So when I was younger, I always felt like I was like talked over, or that like it was hard for me to find my voice. I found it in other ways. Like I'm a theater kid. Like no one's surprised about that, but like I loved musical theater and I was like pretty good at it. I had taken singing lessons, and like that's another aspect of my poetry that you guys have seen. That
what
I
you
started bringing
But
in.
you sing it with so much fashion.
I know.
Like
Thank
you,
you.
like you put your heart and soul into it.
Oh,
You know?
Yeah.
Yo, that was the soul coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that comes from a
Yeah.
theater background. I went to performing arts high school, so I went to LaGuardia School of the Arts. I was a drama
Oh.
major.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was like super shy in high school.
Really?
Yes, I was so shy, but like what got me out of my shell was like I loved singing, I loved performing. So I used to go to a school for like a really prestigious conservatory, and it was actually in that conservatory that I witnessed a lot of stuff that made me want to go into the direction of politics and like political art. Like it was a predominantly white institution, and I would see a lot of racism happening to my friends and my peers, not necessarily by the institution, sometimes by professors, sometimes by like other students who had a lot of money and weren't always exposed to students of other cultures and like treated them in really like demeaning ways. And I went from being super shy to like being the one that would say something, not because I felt superior to anyone, but because no one else was doing it. And like I also understood my privilege in that situation where it was like I am a lighter skinned Latina woman, and like so I can sometimes like people feel like nervous to say things because their repercussions would be so much worse versus if I were to say something. So I would like do that for my friends, knowing that okay, I'm not afraid and I know my privileges in this situation, so I want to use that for good. And that changed everything. And then I came back to New York also because it was like as much as Harvard to like stay there. So it was just like not feasible for me to continue school there. And then I just kind of like catapulted and continued from there, and then it manifested into what it is now.
No, yeah. Do you feel like the reason, like, you were just over it, like, you were over it, just seeing so much unfairness happen,
Yeah.
and you were like, someone has to speak up. If I don't do it myself now, it's always gonna stay like this.
Yeah.
I understand from where you're coming to. I just feel like sometimes with me, when I see something like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that Julio had an experience too, where he was judged, he was put to the side. I guess for the color of his skin, for his culture, all of that. Do you
Yeah.
wanna expand
So
on that?
yeah, no, yeah. So I always like I have a feeling. I'm just like I always when I feel people are same demographic, ethnicity, but when I told them you feel like you had to work 3 times as hard. Imagine me.
Yeah.
The way I look, the color of my skin, I have to work even twice as that. That's like 6 times as hard. It's sadly to say, you're passable. Me, I still have to fight for it. You're already you're still fighting when you're in there. Imagine a person like me. It's funny because when I feel people sense it too.
Yeah.
When I see something like not going, like I feel like I just get looked at like, oh, what is he gonna say?
Yeah.
But it's true. When I see unfairness happen in any scenario, I always speak up like, hey, like what's up, like
Yeah.
And so your story was like, oh, it's very interesting, and it is needed because if no one speaks up, then it's just gonna continue. And I'm glad that also that you were able to do that and you were able to find your voice. Do you still continue like having scenarios like that as you're doing what you do?
Recently, no. Thank God. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. For a long time, I was not. And I think, but because I'm still establishing myself in like different spaces, especially academia. Like academia is its own beast, and like I'm still finishing up like school because like that experience at Centro changed my life. So now like I'm kind of doing certain classes, like restudying certain things so I can be a historian. But right now, at least I'm lucky enough to not experience it, but I have seen it done to other friends of mine because of what you said about like certain privileges that I hold that are unfortunately still run rampant in communities, like the issue of colorism, for example. Like one of the things that I'm putting together for my like work plan for Centro is talking about anti-Blackness in the Caribbean and in the Latino community, talking about people who are putting down individuals who are indigenous within our communities because that runs rampant as well. And like talking about the importance of Haiti within like when it comes to Latino liberation and also like Caribbean liberation. Like these things are so important.
Yeah, and I think too, these type of sentiments are very like rooted. They've established this idea that if you're lighter skin, that like you're more than somebody with darker skin, and it's run through like even colonial times, right? That's where I feel like it started, but it's run rampant through so many communities, you know, through Haiti, through Puerto Rico, through Mexico, Colombia,
Oh
all
yeah.
of that. And I feel like it's done so much damage. Like it's at this point, it's like, you know, like how do you even fix that, you know? Because it's been so deep rooted into our communities.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, honestly, is education. I always say all the time, I'm like, the price of ignorance is apathy. So a lot of the times, like, people feel like it doesn't affect them, so they don't have to learn about it. It's why I'm so big on, like, I mean, even the fact that I'm a Colombian woman in one of the largest Puerto Rican, like, archives, the fact that I met you guys and I wanted to be more involved within the Mexican community, the fact that I work with the MENA community for Palestine, like, all of these intersections are so important. And like that's why I try to do as many like intersectional things together. Like I'm also putting together a event for like the hunter community about AAPI solidarity, specifically South Korean solidarity with Puerto Rico, with the Caribbean. Like these things, to see those intersections are so important. So education's a big thing. Also like going into colleges and also outside of colleges, because college is not always possible for everyone. Not everyone finishes college, and that's okay. That doesn't make anyone less than anyone else. That doesn't make anyone's like opinions. And this is coming from like an academic. Like I will never respect anyone who is like, oh, I don't want to listen to what they have to say because they didn't finish college. You don't know why they didn't finish college. College isn't always accessible to everyone. And their experiences, a lot of the times, are exactly what academics study. So why wouldn't you want to hear what they have to say? And a lot of the times, like, when I see ignorance, even people with me, for example, I have Asian heritage in my family, specifically my dad's side. And so sometimes I am kind of received differently by Latino community members that don't know that I'm Colombian right away. This doesn't always happen, but like this does happen in general. And like I've had, and as someone who works like very deeply within the Latino community, I've had people say Asian slurs to me. I've had people say slurs about like indigenous individuals to me because I'm ethnically ambiguous. I've had people assume that I didn't know Spanish and like call me weird things, fetishize me. And I know in my heart that this isn't a reflection of the entire Latino community, but it is an issue. And it is so much worse for individuals with darker skin than I have or who are Afro-Latino. So a lot of this is like saying something, like cutting it at the root, but also educating our communities, going into like different, like what you guys do, like having events where you're being educational, where you're like putting fun and culture into the communities. It's so important. That's why I respect you guys so much. And I respect people that do that, because it is because of you guys that people are coming and they want to be in community with other individuals, and they also want to learn. So like we basically want to make history fun, make it more accessible, make it free, and make people want to come and learn that, like, oh yes, I do want to learn about other people's cultures because I want them to learn about mine so they don't have any stereotypes or misconceptions about me. So therefore it's only right that I learn about other people's.
No, yeah, and also, you know, when talking to each other, we just started realizing how many similarities we have too. You
Yeah.
know, at the end of the day, we end up finding out we're not alone. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh, they won't understand, but again, you know, sometimes our events, people get to make new friends, or they be like, oh, you just came here too, and it's like, oh, same here, or like, you know, same again, like heritage and all of that, you know. And again, yeah, it's, you know, you don't really need to have go to college in order to, you know, to know what you want to do and have a good education. I had a conversation actually with a classmate like, about that. He was like,
College is very important.
it
Though,
is
I will
important.
say it is
If you
important.
if
Stay
you
in
if you
school.
have
If you
access,
have
yeah, yeah.
access, do it.
This is what I'm about to get into that.
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, he told me like, do you do what you do? So is college important? I mean, it is. Look, we live in a world where we're getting judged a lot. Don't let this degree be one of the reasons they judge you and they tell you you're not important, even though you know you are. Just get it, learn from it, because there's a lot. I'm still learning from it.
Yeah.
Even though I tell you that I'm doing all of this college is something, an experience that I'm gonna never forget.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful experience. Education is so important. Like I said, like I want to stop the stigma of people not listening to those who weren't able to get that education. There's many reasons why people can't get that, but if you can, do it. Do it. There's people, I'm also finishing my bachelor's a little later, and there's people that have told me, well, you already have a career. why are you finishing like school if you already have a career? And I'm like, well, I want to be a historian.
Mhm.
I need to have a bachelor's if I'm gonna get a
Yeah.
master's or a PhD. Like, I'm gonna have a lot of pride when I finish, when I walk across that stage. Like, my family came here for me to have an education. Like,
Yeah.
my father came here at 13, escaping the drug wars in Colombia. My grandparents on my mother's side came to Sunset Park, like I was talking to you guys
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
They came to Sunset Park. My grandfather broke his back waiting tables and working as a cleaner to send my mom to school. Like there's so many opportunities here, and like in anywhere if you can get an education, like I strongly recommend it. It's so important. Yeah, so there's like that kind of double entendre as to say, or like there's
Yeah.
beauty in both basically.
And talking about education, you know, your poetry is now part of the curriculum. How does that actually feel, you know, having one of your pieces that, you know, maybe you thought, you know, this is just for me, this is my art, this is something I'm putting out there, now be part of a curriculum?
Honestly, like crazy. I mean, how that even happened was I was recommended to this professor. But this professor essentially is the head of the Latino department in this school.
Mhm.
I also had another professor reach out to me from another school wanting to use the same poem for her curriculum. So this is like a new development. But this professor, who is the head of a department for Latino studies, was asking one of my bosses, actually at my job, do you know any like contemporary young poets, Latino poets, that I really want to bring them into, like incorporate their work into my poetry class? And she recommended me. And it was really cool because a lot of my stuff, I have the honor to work with really incredible people. I've worked with Lincoln Center's poet in residence, Mahogany L. Brown. I've worked with like Grammy Award winning writers like Asia Monet, for example, on like really big platforms. So I already kind of had that experience of working alongside giants. And I've only been writing for 2 years. So everything is like, I'm still a baby and still learning about it. But the specific poem that is being taught, that a lot of the times people ask if they can teach it, which is actively happening, is a poem called Canción de las Flores, which is accompanied by a song that I sing that is not my own, but the poem is my own. It's about femicide in South America. And I feel like a lot of the times, like I want to talk about feminism, Latina feminism. That's what I'm studying to be a historian for, to specifically look into women that are no, a lot of the times forgotten because of machista within our historical systems, and bringing their stories to light. And I wrote that poem after my cousin came. She like was visiting us from Colombia, and she was telling me about the girls that were going missing in her university. And this was like a big issue that happens in Colombia, but that also happens in Mexico, that happens across Latino America. But people, it's a very hush hush thing. Like I feel like people, it happens so often, but I think because of how painful it is, people don't talk about it. But it needs to be talked about. These women are missing. These women are murdered constantly, and we have to change how we're raising our young men. So I wrote about that, and I wrote kind of like a metaphor of like women becoming flowers, to try to like have a more dignified way of speaking of their passing. And it touched a lot of hearts of people, and it's my most requested poem. It's what got me to like it got published multiple times. It got me to these huge stages. It allowed me to meet like some of my literary idols. And it is now being taught, and I'm so happy. I've wrote a couple of poems, but I am very happy that that is the one that is continuously being taught to young people, especially young women, that their stories matter. And these stories, talking about domestic violence, talking about femicide, we need to have these conversations, especially when it comes to the Latino community. So it's an honor. I don't take it for granted at all, and I will continue to write about our communities and to write about our women.
You know, all right, you write your poetry, you know, you put a lot of emotion and thought into it, you know, as you're speaking now. What is your process like? You know, how long does it take you to finish a poem? And what mood are you in during that moment?
It can take anywhere from 3 hours at 3 a.m. to days, to like 2 weeks. It depends on the poem. It depends on what's on my heart. I've noticed that when people try to give me like a theme, and they're like, can you write about this? It's really difficult for me to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're like, oh, but you've written like beautiful things before, and I'm like, it has to be something that's like on my heart, or something that makes me like
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah.
Kind of like I call it my like rage poems,
Mm.
because a lot of it comes from anger, and I've like learned how to like put my frustration and anger into art, and into almost like it's like almost I call it like divine rage. So like the fact that people don't talk about the women that go missing that my cousin knows, like that makes me angry.
Yeah.
My poem about ice makes me angry, of course. I recently wrote a poem actually about, after talking about like what happened with Dolores Huerta, which I actually haven't shown anyone yet, but it's like on my phone.
Yeah.
But like talking about that, like those things that make you angry, like I strongly recommend putting that into words, putting that into art, because it's important to like first of all have a healthy outlet, and second of all like make your voice heard. And like once again, like going way back to the beginning of this conversation where I talked about like feeling very like stifled in my speech, feeling like people weren't listening to me for a long time for a multitude of different reasons, especially coming from Colombian culture where a lot of it's very machista. And now like growing into this person who is a very loving person but doesn't let anyone step on me, and will use history to educate others, to stop those things from continuously happening in our communities. Instead of like shaming, it's more of like call-ins. But it's still like you're allowed to feel angry that these things are happening.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, I think women are taught to just, do the work in the house, right? Clean, cook, whatever. We're not really taught to express our emotions. We're not taught to step outside of the household and
Yeah.
further our education. The other day too, I heard that like a lot of women get sick because they are not expressing their emotions. They're not telling people how they feel.
You
and
get
so
immune like
you get immune-
deficiencies.
yeah.
Yes, that's
You've
real.
heard that too.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but I think
Go.
a man.
No,
taking
don't.
away
Why
your-
is that crazy?
I do not think that of you, Fulia. No worries.
Yeah.
And also, like, I want to make this also very clear. Like, I'm a huge feminist. Will always be a feminist. But I also think that you can be a feminist. I still want to get married one day. I want to have kids. Like, I want to have a beautiful family. Like, I believe in love. I'm a big lover girl. I think there's room for both. I just don't want to live in a machista household, man. Like, that's like the vibe, you know?
Yo mando. You're like, at the end of the day, I want love, pero yo mando.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
We want best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like more modern times, I guess. But
Yeah.
do you want to go?
No, yeah, Can I now?
Yes.
Yo, we allow
Of course,
you.
Julio.
We allow
No,
you.
it's important that we have you in this conversation. No, seriously, I'm so serious.
No. I'm actually like I love how passionate you are about when you're writing your poem, and you do it with feelings and emotion.
Thank you.
I think that's how art reaches out to people. As with the designs too for Con Tiempo, it always has to
Yeah.
mean something to me. I just don't bring something out because it sounds cool. It's a whole process.
Yeah.
As I'm walking through galleries, as I'm going through thinking about my life, as how I've been growing, and all of that, I just have to really connect to it. So sometimes when I talk about design, when people ask me, I get very emotional into it because I remember where I was at that moment or time.
Yeah.
One of the ones I always hit, it like hits me hard, right here on the chest is La vida es una lucha, because that's always about me dealing with my alcohol abuse and the person that I was, and I was just like a whole mess. And a lot of people don't know that. They think it's a luchador, but it was actually it's luchador because it was me fighting with my demons and me trying to always fight to try to change.
Yeah.
And from when I finally achieved that, and I'm doing better every day by day. I was just like, this was the struggle that I was going to.
Yeah.
And each one has their own struggle. And then the clown season 2, that's another personal one that I'll talk about it later. But that's also connected to La Vida es una lucha.
Yeah.
And it has a very different perspective as, El Payaso en Historia. I look at the perspective of the other person, of me in their shoes. And also that hits me very, close to
Yeah.
home. And I feel like that's why, you know, people are attracted to it and it calls them because, again,
They're beautiful designs.
you know, it was like, you don't know the amount of like I went through to just think about that and why I decided to do that,
Yeah.
you know. And so, again, you know, congratulations on everything that you've been doing too. And I totally, after hearing your poems, I'm like, I totally understand it,
Yeah.
you know, because when you read and when you sing, it's like a pause. I'm like, whoa, you know?
Yeah.
You definitely commanded room whenever you know, speak your pieces.
Thank you.
There's like everybody was. I remember at the sentimientos, everybody was crying when you're, you know, and my mom was there too, and she was like, we were walking home, and she was like, you know, this girl, like, she just did her thing. Like, I couldn't hold my tears. Like, it just hit her so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, again,
Cute.
yeah, you know, that's the most important part, where if you can make someone feel your rage, you can go in different directions when you're protesting, but with the art, with sentimientos, you know, people feel it a lot more.
Yeah.
Especially with spoken word.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I actually want to quickly also comment what you said. Actually, respond to both of you guys. First of all, congratulations on the beautiful community that you've built. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Like, I'm very proud of you. Like, my work comes from, unfortunately, like, being a survivor of abuse, being a survivor of domestic violence, coming from a family who survived that. And it's even more layered because I'm so passionate about, like, our communities, about the Latino community, and a lot of my harm has come from other Latino men. And, like, kind of sitting with those nuances of, like, machista and talking about those things, because it's important for, I wish I had someone that I could have related to at that time, of feeling like I was alone, knowing that this was like a generational cycle of the women in my family. And now looking at it from, like, the outside in, like, my love for our community has, like, not gone anywhere at all, and will never go anywhere, regardless of the experiences that I've had or the experiences that I know other women have faced, which is where the Dolores Huerta poem comes in, which will be shown soon. But
can't wait.
so I want to commend you, because as someone who has built a career and it continues to build a career off of what used to be pain, it is so beautiful when that manifests into something that people can relate to, just like your mom, where that comes in. Like, when you told me that over, like, voice message, you made me cry. You made me cry because, like, that's why I do it. Like, I do it for the women that haven't felt heard. Like, I remember when my mom first heard it, she started crying and I cried because, like, you always want to make your mom proud, you know? So, like, that is every time I do anything, whenever, like, an older woman comes up to me, it's like, thank you for sharing your voice, like, or, like, a young girl is like, that made me feel less alone. Like, that's why I do it. Like, I am very appreciative of the accolades that I've had and the recognition I've had, but truly, like, why I do it is because of those responses, is because I too know what it's like in a different way to suffer and to not know what to do with that. And so, like, seriously commending you for your incredible journey. And, like, I'm so happy that my work was able to touch someone that was so important to you. Like, that's why I want to do these things. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was a lot. Yeah, no, yeah, you know, I definitely, you know, learning more about you, you know, and then the abuse too, as someone else who's, you know, survived through, you know, abuse as well, you know. I speak my story a little bit, you know, not all the time, just because I speak it, you know, to men, you know, because men also go through physical abuse.
Of course, yeah.
You know, as someone who, me myself also would, you know, get hit. It's, you're just trying to come in understanding, you know, sometimes it's the best to just walk away and choose yourself.
Yeah.
And also make the other person choose themselves too. And yeah, but things do get better, and you know, it's what we do with all of that, those past incidents, that it's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was hot. All right, so let's get into this segment. It's called Spooky Scary Story Time. After all of that,
it's like we're like having such, like, it was such like a moment.
Yo,
spooky scary time.
Yo,
That is spooky scary.
Yo.
Oh my god.
Yo. If you curd, I curd. Like, if you curd, we all gonna curd.
Spooky scary. Oh my god.
I have a good one though.
Wait, I want to hear it. I'm gonna
Alright.
I'm gonna take out my drinky drink and listen. I'm all ears.
So it was like 3 weeks ago. I stayed over at my friend's place because it was late, and my friend told me like, "Hey, like, I just want to know. I think like I sometimes I get scared in my place." I'm like, "Really? Why?" And like I don't know. I just hear things, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." You know, my room is haunted, so I'm like used to it. So I'm like I go and I'm getting ready to go to sleep,
Yeah.
and then I swear I hear my mom's talking to me. Like I hear her like speaking to me like, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like they said that, you know, this place haunted. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I swear to you, I heard my mom speak to me like, hey, Julio, ¿dónde estás?
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck.
Oh my god.
I
It was-
believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, and my friend was Oaxacan too, so I was like, I think it's a Oaxacan thing. You know, we talk to ghosts and we like always see ghosts.
Yeah.
And then also, I remember the spot where it was just you and me like setting up.
Hola Mi Gente! Please subscribe to our Raices Patreon.
By being a paid member, you will donate towards upgrading our equipment and you'll get exclusive content from our interviews.
This will allow us to improve the experience for you, the Raices viewers. Thank you.
Can you just pass? Hola, mi gente. Today we're with.
Karina Ordóñez.
Yes. What did you have today?
have like tea?
Yeah, sure.
Oh.
Yeah. Or chata.
Hola mi gente. The bear. Does he have a name?
This one?
Yeah.
It's Osito.
Osito.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like, you put your heart and so into it.
Oh,
You know?
Yeah.
Yo, I brought the other. Like, that was the soul coming out. Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
yeah.
It was beep, and then.
Yeah.
I think.
Go.
Oh man.
No,
Taking
don't.
away
What?
the-
No.